Okay. This is a test to see exactly how the live streaming features on Riverside work for a future large project. But for today, hopefully we get some decent video. I'm just going to talk about what I published today. I don't know if this is going to go through to Riverside, so maybe somebody is seeing this and I have no idea. But I'm going to talk into the room. So the thing I published today, which things that I have not yet figured out, are how to get screen share going on. So that'll be coming later. But you do have an image here of the new piece that you can see at davidzmorris.substack.com. Let me see if I can actually do this. Okay, here again. This is all about experiments. So if you go save and show. Okay, davidzmorris.substack.com. We're low fidelity here, but that is where you need to go. We're also low fidelity if you can't tell because of the background is just doesn't work because I have a mess behind me, but I figure it's better to look weird than to have a mess behind me. So it's a little loopy. Anyway, what we have here is a few people who you might recognize and some who you might not. Obviously, this is Casey Affleck. This is Pete Davidson. This guy who you might not know by look is um, Liman? Doug Liman. Doug is his name. Doug Liman, who's a really well known film director. He directed The Bourne Identity. He directed. Adjust my camera here, see if we can't get something a little bit more compelling here. Oh, there we go. Now I'm actually kind of centered. Learning by doing. So Doug Liman directed The Bourne Identity. He directed the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. He directed another movie called Jumper that I don't really know. But he made at least a few good movies. The other two people here are Calvin Ayre in the bottom right corner with these, we'll call them women for legal reasons. And then Craig Wright up in the left hand corner, who is being played by Casey Affleck in a film directed by Doug Liman. And this is where things get truly insane. So the film is called either Bitcoin or Killing Satoshi. It went to Cannes in May and sold internationally, and so it'll have an official title for release soon, but it's been called a couple of different things. Pete Davidson here plays Calvin Ayre. I mean, you can see the resemblance, a 60-year-old fat guy and a 35-year-old skinny guy. They're the same guy. Um, and this is all, you might start, if you recognize Craig Wright, you'll begin to sense how weird this is because Craig Wright is basically a court-proven fraudster who has pretended to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, for about 10 years. And as I write in this piece at davidzmorris.substack.com, it is, and by the way, Dark Markets is the name of my little solo publication. Craig Wright's goal, and he is financially backed by Calvin Ayre because they want to be able to take roughly $80 billion worth of Bitcoin that was mined by the real Satoshi Nakamoto back in 2009 or so, 2010, something like that. They want to get a court order saying that they belong to Craig Wright because Craig Wright is Satoshi. That has been their goal. I don't know exactly how they planned to. I think there have been discussions of how they planned to unlock all of that Bitcoin, which presumably, if Satoshi lost the private key and Satoshi is Craig Wright, then the private key doesn't exist. I think they wanted to do something like fork the entire chain so that Wright could get those Bitcoin, which isn't really how it works. And frankly, one of the reasons that people have known for a long time that Craig Wright is not Satoshi is that he generally does not seem to understand very much in detail how Bitcoin works. Anyway, to backtrack and to tell a little bit more of this story, in about 2020, according to emails leaked by various collaborators of Calvin Ayre, around 2020, and by the way, this has been told in detail by Arthur Van Pelt at the Medium page My Legacy Kit. So look for My Legacy Kit, Arthur Van Pelt. He is a very, very good and serious researcher over time who I have a lot of admiration for. He really has tried to hold people to account. And he details how in about 2020, Calvin Ayre said, we're going to start doing this documentary about Craig Wright. That's how this project started in 2020, is as a documentary. And then you can infer based on the timeline of these court cases that about 2022, 2021, activity on this supposed documentary halted. It didn't really have much momentum until around 2024 when Craig Wright had been shown in a UK court to not be Satoshi Nakamoto. A UK court ordered him to not only stop claiming that he was Satoshi and stop suing people for arguing with him about it, but in fact to pay the legal fees of an organization called COPA, which brought the suit against him that ultimately forced him to admit that he was not Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, what's interesting here is that COPA is actually featured in this film as not a legal defense organization formed by people who are promoting Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but as a shadowy international organization run by, elites, let's say, who in the script of this film try to kill Craig Wright multiple times. At the same time, this film has been advertised or promoted as a quote unquote true story. That part of it is definitely not true. Not only did COPA, another part of the synopsis, which I detail in the post, is that the film claims that COPA spent hundreds of millions of dollars attacking Craig Wright. That's actually not what happened. COPA spent maybe 10 million or 20 million, and then the judge ordered Craig Wright to pay those legal fees because he was so obviously in the wrong. So all of this is a propaganda effort, and it's really, as I note in the post, quite sad to see Doug Liman, in particular, who his career has not been awesome since The Bourne Identity 20 years ago. He most recently directed a remake of, God, what's the Patrick Swayze movie? Roadhouse. He directed the 2024 Roadhouse remake with Jake Gyllenhaal, which is a fine, fun, stupid movie, but certainly not art. And so that's what Doug Liman is doing here. However, the other reason, and the reason that they were able to be conned, frankly, or willingly conned, perhaps, by Craig Wright and Calvin Ayre, is that what they really wanted to do, Doug Liman and Casey Affleck, was use it as a platform for AI filmmaking. Now, this is where the cons just really line up, because you'll talk to a lot of people, and at the very least, there is widespread resistance to the application of AI to filmmaking in Hollywood. And there are deeper arguments that it's sort of a dead end and that it won't actually, it's probably got some applications. But regardless of whether it's real or fake or unethical filmmaking or what have you, it is a huge gold rush. So Ben Affleck is Casey Affleck's brother, and he just sold an AI film studio to Netflix, quote unquote AI film studio, whatever that means. Sold it to Netflix for $570 million. So there is a lot of money on the line here. And Doug Liman, of course, has his own AI film studio called 30 Ninjas, which worked on this film. The main funder of this thing is a person named Ryan Kavanaugh, who's a longtime Hollywood financier. Kavanaugh has his own AI film studio, which is called, let me look actually at my post. Kavanaugh's film studio is called Acme AI and FX. They're the primary funders of this production. And they, are going to use this film as sort of advertising for an acquisition, frankly. Like, they don't, honestly, Lyman and the Kavanaugh guy, they don't really give a shit whether this is a real movie or not, or whether it's good, and this is why they don't care that, like, Ayre and Craig Wright are fakes and liars, because they did get some money from Calvin Ayre at the beginning of this process, it appears. Ayre, I think, put like $15 million in, at least that's what's indicated by some of the communications that came out, and then got other people to backfill the other 75 or whatever it is, 65 million out of the 90. 75 million out of the 90. And so this is really a collaboration of mercenaries who don't care about the truth or art, I think, is what would be the thing to say. And, you can say that Casey Affleck doesn't really have a lot in common with Craig Wright in terms of playing him in a movie, but they both do seem like scumbags, so they do at least have that in common. Doug Liman, no comment. Pete Davidson, who knows? But, look up Casey Affleck and see what people think about him, and maybe it does make sense that he's playing Craig Wright. I think since this is a test, I'll just end this right here, and we're going to have to see what happened to all of this video that I just shot. and I'm learning how to do some of this interactive stuff. This is the first time I've had a piece of media up on the screen, so that is already a step forward. All right, let's see what happened here. Take care, everybody. Check out David Z. Morris.